Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, How to Track Waste and Materials in Portfolio Manager. We'll be getting started in about 5 minutes. As you are joining, we do have a quick pre-webinar poll in the polling panel on the right side of your screen. If folks want to fill that out before we get started, we would really appreciate it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, How to Track Waste and Materials in Portfolio Manager. We will be getting started in just a minute. As you're joining, we do have a quick pre-webinar poll on the polling panel on the right side of your screen. So if folks want to fill that out before we get started, we would really appreciate it. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, How to Track Waste and Materials in Portfolio Manager. Before we get started, I do have a few housekeeping items to run through. First, you can submit questions to our question and answer portion of this webinar by sending them in the chat to the host. You can access the chat by hovering your cursor over the speech bubble icon on the bottom right side of your screen. A link to the recording and the presentation slides will be sent out to registrants after the webinar. So just keep that in mind. Now I'm going to introduce Alice Bell, who will be getting us started for today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Maddie. Really appreciate the introduction and the housekeeping. Welcome, everyone. My name is Alice Bell. I am an implementation support contractor with ICF, working to support EPA's Energy Star for Commercial Buildings program. If you've joined in our Portfolio Manager 101, 201, and 301 webinars, today's going to be pretty similar. This webinar does assume that you have already created your property and have some basic familiarity with the process of entering a meter and where to find the kind of values that you're going to want to track, so your energy usage, your materials generation, and so on. Before we get too much further into things, I also do want to highlight, like Maddie said, we'll be having a question and answer period at the end of the presentation. We've allocated time for about 5 to 10 minutes for this. So as you come up with questions, please do go ahead and send them to the host in the chat, which you can access on the bottom of your screen. This will help us gather any materials that you may need and kind of generally have our ducks in a nice neat row to get to as many as possible at the very end of the session. You'll also notice if you have to leave at any point during today's session, there will be a little survey pop up in your browser. We do really dive deep into the content that we get back from these resources, these surveys. And so we'd really appreciate it if you could take as many or as few minutes as you have to fill it out and to give us some feedback on our content and on our presentations. This helps us continue to improve the trainings program and get you the kind of resources you actually need. And so with that, I will go ahead and get things started. Thanks again for joining. So today's agenda, we're going to start with a bit of an overview of Portfolio Manager and an orientation to some key terminology that you'll see around waste tracking in the tool. We'll then have a short demonstration of how to enter some waste meters and track over time, and we'll conclude with our Q&A session. I'll also remind everyone here, like Maddie said, we'll be sending out a copy of these slides and the presentation recording at the end of the day. So kind of the core of Portfolio Manager, no matter what you're choosing to measure, is that you can't manage what you don't measure. And EPA is really trying to enable you to measure anything you could possibly want at your property using Portfolio Manager. It's free, it's online, you can access it wherever you are, and it helps you both track your energy, water, and waste, and benchmark the performance of your building or your entire portfolio in a secure online space. It also allows you to generate some metrics. As a management tool, it helps you to assess whole building energy and water consumption and waste and materials generation. If you're consistent with this, you're also able to track change over time, track green power purchases, share your data via reports and charts, and apply for certification and other kinds of recognition through EPA and other entities. Waste tracking is somewhat newer and somewhat smaller than energy and water tracking. If you've worked with Portfolio Manager with any sort of consistency, you're probably familiar with the energy portion of the tool. That's what most of our work is on. But waste tracking is one of the key parts of management tools and metrics in Portfolio Manager, and it's increasingly widely used and widely considered as an important part of sustainability at companies, at schools, and kind of throughout industries nationwide. If you're choosing to track any one of these three materials, or all three, it'll give you a really comprehensive picture of the resources that your property is consuming and how it's disposing of the waste that it generates. And there are a couple of reasons that you might want to do this. First of all, it helps you save money and conserve resources. Time is money, and so this is a very easy interface, which we'll get into in a bit later. But this is also a really great way to figure out where are you overpaying, how to evaluate the kinds of money sinks at your property. Maybe you're paying a ton of money for very little trash hauling, which is great. We want to minimize trash. But this is going to help you identify where those gaps are and begin to move into waste diversion. So why did we actually add this? Well, our partners wanted it. In short, hundreds of thousands of commercial properties are already using EPA's Energy Star Portfolio Manager to track, measure, assess, and report on their energy, water, and waste. And so increasingly, waste is becoming central to their focus. And this means that your company might already be benchmarking energy consumption in Portfolio Manager, and it may already have property records created for your buildings. In that case, if you're joining as a representative of a company that already uses Portfolio Manager, you may not need to create a new record. You may just need to gain access or work with the property data administrator to start entering your waste generation. Now, before we go any further, we did have a little poll up, and I wanted to take a moment to run through that with everyone. I'm going to make that poll visible to everyone. And it looks like most folks on the line today are pretty new to Portfolio Manager. We have a couple old hands, and we have a couple folks that are quite unfamiliar. So this is great. This will be a really quick intro to some of the interfaces that you'll work with in the tool, no matter what you're choosing to benchmark. And if you're interested in benchmarking energy, I encourage you to come back to our Portfolio Manager series. We offer these on a monthly basis, and there are three sort of tiers, if you will. 101 is the key information that you need to get started. You can stay there and you can benchmark and you can do great. But if you want to get into some of the higher level functionalities, you can move on to 201 and 301, which are also offered monthly. We offer the whole series every month. So this is great. This will help me to give a little bit more detail in my Portfolio Manager interface tour. Thanks, folks.
Alice, before you progress, I just want to make sure that folks can see the slides. We did get one comment that slides were not being seen. So if folks don't mind sending in the chat if you could see the slides or not, that would be great.
Thanks, Maddie.
Okay, we're good. Thanks, Alice.
Okay. Yeah, sure thing. Thanks, guys. Excellent. So, this is one of the key things is, how do you get your data in? Where do you get that data? That's the key part. So there are three ways to enter data for your property or your portfolio. You can use manual entry, which is going to be kind of the most simple, the most intuitive, I find, approach, which is to manually create and update your meters and your properties individually as you receive bills. Your second data management method is going to be to upload data using spreadsheet templates, which allow you to either upload to a single meter at a single property, or multiple meters at a single property, or multiple meters at multiple properties all at once. Again, these are gone into in more detail in Portfolio Manager 201 and 301. But this is one option if you're really comfortable in Excel rather than learning this new interface. That spreadsheet upload is a great option for you. And then the third way is to work with a utility provider that exchanges data directly with Portfolio Manager using our Web Services API. And this is also an increasingly popular option for both users and for utilities. When this started, there were not as many utilities that were set up to provide data this way, but we're seeing an increasing number be able to just upload your data directly, which really simplifies the tracking process and enables you to measure more accurately and therefore manage better. So now we'll get a bit deeper into some of the terminology that you'll run into when you start to benchmark your waste and materials. So in Portfolio Manager, the first thing you're going to choose is the waste material type, and we have 29 different categories that are built in. Some of these include the traditional, from trash, recyclables, compost, and food scraps, to things like furniture, building materials, and chemical waste. You're also going to be able to choose your management method. There are 4 options, and some of these are not going to be, available for all different waste types. So you can't, of course, donate your food scraps, unfortunately, but you can compost them. So depending on the material type, you'll be offered a series of management methods to choose. And the 4 that are built in are donated or reused, recycled, composted, and disposed. If you choose disposed, you'll begin to receive 4 options for where your disposed waste will go. So again, landfills, incineration, waste to energy, and you'll see parenthetically, this is incineration for energy recovery, not landfill with gas recovery. And you're also able to choose other or unknown. There's also the option for waste diversion, which is the sum of composted, recycled, and donated or reused materials that are left over. So everything that does not go into one of those 4 above choices: landfill, incinerated, waste to energy, or your sort of other unknown option. So you'll see on screen, this is the list of 29 material types that Portfolio Manager is set up to accept. And to pull these together, EPA looked at the material categories that are most used by WasteWise partners. So those that were in EPA's waste reduction mode, and other feedback from Portfolio Manager users. And so if you have materials that don't fit into one of these categories, you can choose other. And you'll note that for other, you have the option to select disposed, donated, recycled, or composted. It's not limited like any of the other fields might be. We also did not include universal or hazardous waste, since these are regulatory terms. And if a waste product is defined as one of these 2, it will be redirected depending on the jurisdiction, the type and the amount of the waste, and how it was generated. So of course you wouldn't have a biohazard material be tracked here. So one example is electronics. You will see that electronics are listed here, but some states consider them to be universal or hazardous waste. And if you have, again, one of these, a material that does not fit into one of these categories, you can choose other to continue tracking the volume and the type, but be more exact about what it actually is. And again, you will receive a copy of these slides after the presentation, so there's no need to copy this down. You'll be able to access these via PDF. So when you go to set up your meter in Portfolio Manager to track your waste type, you'll be able to indicate how frequently the material is picked up. So the first choice is regularly. This is going to be for things that are picked up on an ongoing basis, perhaps weekly or bi-weekly. This is for me personally, my compost is picked up bi-weekly. So I would enter that as a regular meter. And you'll also be able to choose whether this is measured. So if you know the volume or the weight of the type of waste you're disposing of, you can report it that way. And this would be marked as estimated if it's a weight you're not really sure about. So if maybe your scale is really bad or you just think you can mark that as an estimate if you need to. If you only know the container size, you can enter it that way. And you would specify then the number of times that it was emptied and approximately how full it was. And we'll go through both of these, how to enter and then how to update each of these during the demonstration portion of today. You're also able to enter intermittent pickups. This is going to reflect when you have infrequent or one-time events. So as you can see on screen, an annual donation of electrics or construction materials. Furniture is commonly done this way, and so on. If you've entered energy data in Portfolio Manager before, this is going to be similar to the enter as delivery option, which would be something like a generator fuel. One final note here is that if you enter regular pickup, Portfolio Manager will allow you to enter the measured data by weight or to track by container size. And if you track by container size, Portfolio Manager will apply a volume to weight conversion. So since we've done this quick overview, we're going to take a short look at how the process takes place in Portfolio Manager and get a bit of a better understanding of the interface within the Waste and Materials tab in the tool. So give me 2 seconds to set up my screen share. And again, at this time, if you are chewing on any questions, please go ahead and send them in the chat. These are going to be, this is going to help us get to more of them at the very end of the presentation once we're in the Q&A session, and helps us find any materials that you may need in the meantime. So to begin with, Portfolio Manager is accessible through portfoliomanager.energystar.gov. You'll be prompted to log in. This tool is free to use. It will remain free to use. And the registration process for an account is just like any social media account you may have gotten in the past. You have your email, your password, and your first and last name. Before we get any deeper, I do want to highlight, you can have a little check-in here, and this is where your account options are. For today, most key, you're able to update your reporting units here. There are metric units available if you prefer to work in that set of units, but we do default to regular imperial metrics here. I do also want to call out the help menu. If you've ever joined one of my Portfolio Manager 101 sessions, you'll know that I really like this tab. I know a lot of us don't go to the help menu wherever we are often, speaking for myself anyway, but this one really does have a huge range of really, really great resources that may answer your question before you need to ask it. So to start off with, we have a quick start section for short reference guides and fact sheets. We have a series of FAQ documents here on the left and a glossary to help you define any terms you may not know as EPA defines them. So to make sure that you are entering the correct values, you can check out the glossary to see that you're fully understanding what EPA wants you to input. You're all here, so you've probably accessed our trainings calendar, but you are able to access that here to see what kinds of trainings are coming in the next few months and register if you're interested. You can send us a question here at this little green button, and you can find information on web services and get your utility hooked up to your Energy Star Portfolio Manager account at this final link here in the middle. On the right-hand side, we have a series of technical reference guides that will help you to understand the really kind of nitty-gritty aspects of benchmarking. Most of these are energy and water related, but there are several for waste and materials that are just a bit deeper in the more documentation section on the site. And so with that, I'm going to navigate us back to the My Portfolio tab. And you'll see that there are 4 tabs up here at the top. We won't go through all of them today. We're going to mostly work in the My Portfolio tab. And this is where all the properties that you have created are going to live. Today, I'm going to work in this office property that I've created for purposes of demonstrating entering waste and materials. So once you enter your property, you're going to navigate to the Waste and Materials tab, and you'll see that it looks quite a bit like our Energy tab. There's a nice graph here. There's a meter summary right here. We have our meter summary here, and we have a graph, and we have a list of the existing meters at the property. If you have not created any meters yet, this tab will be blank, and it will prompt you to create your first meter. If you ever need to return to your homepage, you can click on My Portfolio up here in the top left, or on the larger logo in the very top left. Now you'll also notice that I have an Energy Star score populated up here. This is going to populate because my property is more or less eligible right now. However, if you're tracking waste and materials only, no energy, no water, your property will not become eligible. And if you're currently certified or currently eligible, whatever you track as waste and materials will not impact your eligibility, nor will it impact your score. It'll impact waste-related metrics, but it won't impact your energy metrics. It's kind of a common misconception that we've run into. So to begin, we're going to start by creating a meter, selecting the materials and management methods. And to do so, we're going to scroll down to this Add a Meter button here and select it. So you can create up to 10 different meters at once. We're going to stick to 4. But usually what you're going to do is you're going to have 1 or more waste meters for each type of waste that you're tracking. And you don't need to track all waste at your property. If you only donate furniture or electronics once a year, you don't have to track that if you don't want to. So we'll do a couple to get the different kinds of waste input. So the common popular ones are up here at the top, and some of the more uncommon ones are at the bottom. Let's start with trash. Recycling. Compostables. And we'll do maybe furniture for our last one. So now we're going to choose the disposal method for each of these. For trash, you'll see it's limited to just disposal. There's no ability to recycle trash. It's kind of inherent. So we'll choose disposing it. If you are for recyclables, you have a couple options. Hopefully you can recycle it, but if you have to trash it, you can. I'm going to choose recycling it. For compostable, you'll see that composting populates, but not recycling. And again, this is Portfolio Manager kind of dynamically choosing what disposal methods exist for a particular type of waste. And then for furniture, we have some interesting options. We have disposing, so maybe you're trashing it, maybe you're landfilling your couch, it happens. Or you can donate or reuse it, which is great. You know, we want to keep stuff out of landfills where we can. So I'm going to choose donating. You'll also notice that there's the option to remove a meter. So maybe you miscreate one. You're welcome to just hit that remove button and be done with it. And so the final step on this page is going to be to hit continue. So this step allows you to provide some more information about each of the meters that you are defining in the prior step. So in particular, you're going to tell Portfolio Manager whether this material is being disposed of regularly, so that kind of normal weekly trash pickup, the biweekly compost pickup, and so on. Or whether this is happening intermittently, maybe once a year, once every 2 years, and so on. This is also where you will begin to choose how you're going to enter data, whether this is based on the weight of the material or on the container volume. This is also where you're going to indicate the date that you started tracking your waste. And this will probably align, as I recommend it anyway, with the first date on your first bill or invoice. If you don't do that, if you maybe say you started tracking, even if you tracked for years and just not put it in Portfolio Manager, it's going to create a gap that will set off an alert in Portfolio Manager that there's missing data. And to minimize that, burden on yourself, we recommend just putting in the first date of the first bill that you plan to enter in Portfolio Manager. I will also note here that this page does change depending on your inputs in the previous page. So, this is not going to populate every kind of meter and every kind of material. You'll just need to, adapt based on your property and based on the kinds of waste you are choosing to get rid of. So here for trash, I'm going to say regularly, and I'm going to say that I know the weight or volume of the material. And then you'll be prompted to choose your units. I'm just going to say pounds maybe. And we'll pick a date. Oops. You're also able to add a custom meter ID here. Portfolio Manager will auto-generate one for you if you don't enter one. This is not required, but if you have any sort of internal system to track your waste, maybe you have tenants with special dumpsters for each of them, this is a great place to identify that or to map Portfolio Manager's waste tracking onto your internal system and minimize any confusion there. So this is trash completed, pretty straightforward. My units are going to be pounds. And then we'll move on to recycling. This is pretty regularly as well. And I'm going to say that I only know the size of my dumpster. So maybe this is done in cubic yards and maybe it's like a 5 cubic yard dumpster. It's not huge. And then we'll say when we started tracking it. So again, you're offered the chance to add a custom meter ID. And you can do that if you choose. I will also say these, for simplicity today, I'm going to enter the same first tracking date for all the meters, but if you have different ones, you can enter that. That's perfectly fine. Now for compostable, I'm going to enter regularly, and I'm going to say I know the volume. Again, we'll say maybe I have tons of compost. Maybe I'm really, really, really all in for composting. And the most important thing here is just to be as accurate as possible. If you know the weight or volume, that's the most accurate way to do it. We recommend doing that if at all possible. But if you do only know the size of the bin, that's totally fine. And then finally, we'll choose donated or reused furniture. We'll say this is picked up intermittently because, you know, that's a lot of furniture. You can't really be doing that every week, or hopefully not anyway. And we'll say this is done in tons. And so at the end of this page, you'll want to check and make sure everything's been completed, everything is accurate. These units can be changed after the fact, but you want to be as accurate as possible so that there aren't any conversions later on that add confusion. And then we'll choose create meters. And so here at the end, you'll see that our meters can, you know, nicely collapse and expand as we want to work on them. You'll see that all 4 have been created and have their own sort of set of columns here. Now, if you've ever entered energy or water in Portfolio Manager, this process is almost exactly the same. You're just going to have different columns to fill out for waste. You're also going to see here on the bottom that there is the option to create a single meter spreadsheet for this meter. Again, very similar to energy. It's effectively going to produce an Excel view of this table here. So you're going to have a start date, an end date, a quantity, a cost column, and you can fill it out in Excel offline and then upload it to Portfolio Manager when you are ready. And that will carry all the values and all the inputs right into the tool without any manual typing online. So we'll start by adding some entries here. And I'm entering this first date to match what I entered on the previous page. It's the first date I started tracking it. It's the first date on the first bill. It is the number 1 of everything. You will see that this autofills here, this end date. This is perfectly changeable. So maybe your your bill was until July 15th of the summer. You can add that and Portfolio Manager will learn from that and will continue to fill out the next entries as you create them with that new end date. But these are all still perfectly changeable as you might need to. You'll then be able to go ahead and enter your quantity of waste. Again, these tables are going to be dynamic depending on what you input on the previous meter setup pages. And we'll go through the other meters that we've created to kind of see some of the columns options that Portfolio Manager will generate for you. But these are all going to vary depending on the materials. So we'll say maybe use 300 pounds of trash in the summer, 500, 600. Now you'll see we have a column for cost, destination, and estimation. Estimation is optional. If this is an exact value, based on a bill or based on your waste haulers report, you would leave this blank. But if this is an estimate for some reason, you'd want to mark that checkbox and say this value might be inexact. You don't need to enter cost, that's optional. But if you want to track cost over time, of course you would need to enter the cost for your waste. And then we'll choose our disposal destination. So this needs to be entered for every single entry because this can change from pickup to pickup. I'm going to go ahead and say this is going to the landfill and 100% is going to go. And we'll go ahead and repeat that process for each line so far. Which leaves us to conclude that 100% of the trash at this property is going to a landfill. So now we can go ahead and move on to recyclables. And you'll see this is one where we specified that we didn't know the volume. We only knew the size of the container. So you'll see in comparison here, the quantity of pounds is something we know for our trash, but we aren't sure for recyclables. So Portfolio Manager is going to give us some new columns and a new way of measuring. So we'll start off with our same dates. It'll autofill the same way. And we'll do our first three. So maybe our 5 cubic yard container of mixed recyclables was emptied 3 times in the month of June 2022. But maybe it was only about half full on average. And so you would specify this % full here. Because both of these can change from entry to entry, you can, of course, add custom information for each month. So maybe I emptied it twice in July, but it was really full for some reason. And then maybe come August, it was extra full. And we had more pickups. So this is when you'll see here, we click off of it to save. There's also a cost option. Again, not required, but if you want to track your cost, you will need to fill that in. There's also the option here to download a single meter spreadsheet for this meter as well. And you'll see for compost, because we entered that this is something we know the quantity of, it produces very similar columns to the disposal of trash, but it's missing the disposal destination, and of course has a different unit. Rather than pounds, it is tons for compost. And I'll go ahead and add these entries just to show you the process once again. Now, the values that you're entering for start and end date and the tons can come from a lot of places. Most commonly, these are going to come from a bill or an invoice, unless you have some way to measure them on your own property. Of course, these aren't quite exact values. I'm not sure how much it would cost to haul away 15 tons of compost. I'm sure it's a bit more than $800, but this is placeholder data for today. And so that is the process for entering data when you know the quantity and know the destination, and the process for when you don't know the quantity, you just know the size of your container and how often it got emptied. Now our fourth meter, our final meter, we entered that it was intermittent pickup. And so in this case, you're not going to have a start and an end date. You're just going to have that one date of the pickup. So maybe we can say this happened on September 30th, 2022. And it was, 100 tons of furniture, a lot of furniture. You're also able to enter cost here and an estimate, if this is an estimate. Again, not required, but an option. And so you just only will need to update this as you have more pickups. This is not going to need to be entered on a monthly basis or, however often your bills come. And so once your meters have been set up and you've entered some data, you can click on Add Meter Entries. And this is where you're going to associate your meters with your property. So this is basically the process of telling Portfolio Manager which meters should be included in your property-wide metrics for waste and materials tracking. So typically you're going to associate all your meters with your property. And if you don't associate them on this initial setup, maybe you create a meter later on for some reason and don't associate it, you have the option to do so, at some other point in its life cycle. And so you can check these boxes as they need to be checked. I'm going to leave all of them checked and say that my property has all 7 meters input, and then we'll choose Apply Selections. And so here we can see that we have all 7 meters listed down here, and they are all used to compute metrics. So they're all being included in our property-wide metrics. Now, one note here is that if you decide to track according to your container size, Portfolio Manager will apply some standard volume to weight conversion factors depending on the material type. And so of the 29 material types that are built into Portfolio Manager, 21 of these have an established conversion, and the other 8 are required to be tracked by weight if you're capturing them in Portfolio Manager. Although, as I said earlier, you are able to mark estimates if you need to. And the materials that don't have these standard conversions are appliances, batteries, electronics, furniture, lamps and light bulbs, office supplies, regulated medical waste, and other. And the last one is because you can't, establish a conversion if you don't know what actually is being disposed of. And again, we will send out a copy of these slides, so that list is going to be captured in the slides, and you don't need to scramble to write that down or anything like that. Now you'll also see that we have this handy chart here that will start to capture all of our waste usage, or consumption, generation over time, And you can refresh this as needed to check on how these are changing with time. So you can see I have a couple of different kinds of trash that I'm generating here. And as you mouse over each of the types, their line will highlight on the chart. Some of these have much less information than others. You'll see this building materials one has, much higher volume than any others. While some of these only have a single entry, like our furniture donation, and some of them have, consistent but low generation. And this, of course, will change depending on your particular mix at your property. Now we're going to go into updating an existing meter. So once you've created your meters, you're going to have continual monthly inputs, right? And you want to be able to add these, compounding data to your property. So what you'll do is you'll choose the meter that you want to update, either identified by the unique ID that Portfolio Manager creates for that meter or by your customized name for it. I haven't customized these, but you of course can when you create them for your property. I'm going to just update my disposed compostable meter here. And so as you click into it, you'll see that my meter has a couple months of data in here already, but we haven't added anything in for October yet. So what you'll do is you'll click on add another entry. You'll see that it autofills those dates. Maybe I got my bill today. Maybe this bill is for October and half of November. and you can update that as needed. So let's say that it got emptied 5 times, and it was about half full all those times. It'll also, in the past, I've entered 100%. I don't know where this is going. It's not going to a landfill, not being incinerated. It's not waste energy. And as you create future entries, Portfolio Manager will carry that on into the future. So you'll see if I was to enter something for the future for the next month of compost, it would assume that 100% of this is going to some unknown future that is not built into PM. And so with that, we can choose Save Bills. And you'll see that my most recent 5-week entry, 6-week entry is saved in Portfolio Manager. Again, you're able to collapse and expand these as you choose. You can also come in here and edit if your meter becomes inactive. You can add in a inactivity date. If you, for some reason, discontinue it, maybe you stop generating trash, which would be pretty amazing. If you wanted to change your name, you could add it here. So maybe land compost. You could choose that. If you need to change this, you'll have these links that will help you to work through that. And if you want to add a customized meter ID, maybe after the fact, you can add that in this basic meter information section. Okay, save changes. And then one other fun fact I like to talk about is you can navigate all your meters from here. So maybe you've done some updates to your waste meters, but you want to click into your natural gas or your electricity meters and make some changes there. That can all be accessed through this little drop down here at the top. And so with that, I'm going to navigate us back to our Waste and Materials homepage. And let's see, that we have our unknown compost meter here at the bottom, and it has a most recent date of 11/17/2022 for its most recent updated date. And then once you start to have more and more months and you have a full calendar year, so maybe August to July, any 12-month period consecutively, you're going to be able to start generating some performance metrics over time. And you'll be able to access those up here in the reporting tab. And so you'll see in this little carousel here, there are some waste related metrics. These reports are for your portfolio wide metrics. So maybe you're tracking waste for 100 buildings. These reports here in the middle of this carousel will show you a portfolio wide view of your buildings and your waste. If you're interested in a specific property, you can select these performance documents here. And if you want to generate a specific property report down here, you can choose an Energy Star report. There is a pre-made waste performance chart, which you can generate here at the bottom. And this includes a number of property level metrics that relate to waste and material quantity, as well as the cost. So if you were entering that cost information, you'd be able to pull that out here and begin to analyze it. This is really useful if you want kind of a high level summary of by your waste management category. But if you want more specific metrics, such as like the total amount or cost of a particular material type, you would take advantage of the custom reports template up here in the top right, which lets you kind of pick your metrics and customize them to look for relationships and kind of go beyond what Portfolio Manager standardly offers to everyone. Again, I will say it's important to note that the tracking of waste does not impact any of your Energy Star metrics or your score. The GHG metrics that Portfolio Manager will calculate only pertain to building energy consumption at this time. We do not factor in waste management strategies or approaches at the moment. And so with that, I'm going to stop my screen share. And I'm going to move us into our Q&A session. Before we go anywhere, I do want to highlight that we have some useful links here embedded in the portfolio, in the presentation. This will take you directly to our waste FAQ documents. You can access our trainings, including further waste trainings, here on the second link. Our third link is a EPA guide to managing and reducing waste for commercial buildings. And the final link is the conversion factors for waste, if you want to kind of check portfolio manager's work and evaluate, and do some analysis on your own end. We also have some pre-recorded webinars here on this page that you can click on these links to review. These are a bit more specific and in-depth than this webinar today. This is a high-level introduction to waste tracking and portfolio manager, but these will let you go a bit deeper. And again, these links will be live in the PDF document slides that you'll receive at the end of today. And so with that, I will thank you all for attending very much. I really appreciate it. We are really glad to have you and to help you start tracking waste. I'm personally very passionate about waste diversion, so it's great to hear folks interested in tracking their waste. And yeah, please send in any questions. If you have to drop, I'm very glad you were able to join. Please do fill out that survey that will come up in your browser. We do use those responses pretty heavily to inform our program, so we would really appreciate your insights as an attendee. With that, I'm going to drink some water and I'm going to pull up our questions. Please go ahead and send those in if you have any lingering ones. Great. Okay, so we have some good questions. Thank you, everyone. We have a question about accurately listing the percent full. That's really just an estimate. As I mentioned, the most exact thing to do is to report the weight or the volume. You can calculate based on the weight of the container, the contents of the container. This person is asking if an occupancy report would suffice. I'm not sure how that would be used to evaluate the percent full, but the percent full is referring to the container of waste. So yeah. We have a question about number of times emptied as an estimate based on the bill. That can be estimated. If the bill says 4 times per week for an entire month, that might end up being 16 times. So you can enter 16. If you get your trash picked up like every Monday, you can enter the number of Mondays that occurred in the time frame that you're entering for that start and end date, and that would be sufficient. There's a question about sharing access for a consultant, and the answer is yes. The one thing is that we do recommend, so portfolio manager data is considered proprietary, and so we recommend not, we recommend the person who owns the building create the account and then shares access with the consultant, who can then, of course, if the property is shared with full editing permission, you could then make any changes necessary. Excuse me. But, we don't want to risk the data being assigned to the wrong person. And the FAQ I just sent in the chat is going to address sharing. We have a question about modifying the volume to weight conversion for the materials that have those. Unfortunately, that cannot be modified. But if you have a particular, waste type or situation in mind, please do go ahead and send us an email. I believe Maddie had sent the help desk link in the chat, and we can connect you with someone who is really an expert on benchmarking waste and can give you some insight into how to make whatever changes to the conversion you might need. There's a question about having more than one other meter. Yep, you can have as many as you want. Although I will say we do encourage you to be as exact as possible about the type to get the most exact information about your waste generation. So kind of like with the conversion factors, we can't have a conversion factor for other waste because there's no way to know what that is. And so, you know, we encourage you to be as exact as possible with the field, or, excuse me, the field types, the waste types, so that you can get actual exact report outs. There's a question about having the disposal destination auto-populate. So yeah, so if you enter that, you enter your first, line entry, and you specify the disposal destination, you can then, add new entries and have it auto-populate that way. There's no way to kind of, drag it down as you would in Excel, but if you, create one entry and then, enter everything and then choose add another entry, it will carry down each of those choices. I hope that helps. If I'm not answering your questions fully, this is a general note. Please do feel free to follow up and let me know, and I will go back to your question and hopefully get it right this time. There's a question about your pickup schedule being variable during the year. I would recommend, again, for the most exact metrics to truly count it out. So if your pickup for 1 month is 12 times, but it's a different number in each subsequent month, I would recommend counting it out. If you don't want to, that's okay, but it will have an impact on the accuracy of the metrics. Sorry, folks, just reading through these questions. Thank you all for sending in so many good ones. We have a question about using this for multifamily properties, and a waste pickup company services your containers. You could definitely ask them what percentage is full or have someone go check. I think the most conservative choice would be to just say that it's 100% full. That will kind of, return the information that you are generating the most possible amount of waste, when in reality it's possibly quite less. I will say I live in an apartment building and people throw out all kinds of wild stuff. So, sometimes it's probably going to be a little more than 100% full. I think that'd probably be the easiest way, is to just assume that it's completely full each month. But again, the most exact thing to do is going to be to have someone to check it, or to get a weight or volume measurement from your waste hauler. We have a question about how Energy Star measures or estimates weight. I'm not sure I understand the question. When you enter waste, you have the option to either enter the container size or enter the actual weight or volume. We do have a conversion, a series of conversion factors. I can pull up the document that has that listed out on the screen. Yeah, so here's the volume to weight conversion factors list from EPA. And that will probably respond. And again, if I haven't answered your question like completely, like to what you actually meant, please do let me know. Happy to go back and do that. We have one question about anaerobic digestion, which I know we've gotten some questions about in the past, and we have an FAQ on this that I will pull up and send. But the short answer is that we recommend that you enter items that go into a digester as compost, so then it will count as diversion rather than counting as landfill or another sort of maybe less nice mode of diversion. There's a question about commercial composting. So there's no way to track the output. I will say there's a way to add notes to your property and portfolio manager. So you could enter the output values there. I think probably the easiest way would be to create some of those Excel reports and then have a track of the output probably internally. There's not really that circularity function tracking available in Portfolio Manager at this time, although perhaps in the future. So we have a question about how to show diversion in Portfolio Manager, and there's a way to access your diversion and disposal rates on the main sort of banner metric on your homepage. You can click a little pencil above it and choose that. You're also able to, in that custom reports feature that I was sharing at the very end, you're able to create a report that will include diversion rates. And I believe you can break that down by excuse me, by the type of materials. Sorry, my train of thought got a little lost there. We have a question about future scoring for waste diversion. I cannot speak to that, but I would encourage you to reach out to the waste team at EPA if you have curiosity and see what their thoughts are. That's going to be the best way to get any input on that. And with that, we are at 2 p.m. So thank you all for joining. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate the great questions. If you have anything that went unanswered, please do email us or email the help desk where if you have property specific questions, if you have a weird situation, a new type of waste we haven't seen yet, let us know. We can work with you to benchmark it properly. And if you have a chance, please do fill out our survey at the very end. That will help our trainings program and then therefore help you quite a bit. Thanks again, and have a lovely rest of your week. Thanks, folks.